Thank you for having me today. So this morning I'm going to talk about the recent changes to the purchase and sale agreement and touch on the topics that have been coming up to Monica in the legal forum and when the class has been taught. So the purchase and sale agreement, the most recent changes to the purchase and sale agreement changes were made to bring it more into the digital age and to protect privacy. And here are some of the main topics that have come up most recently. The date of the agreement, the inspections and other contingencies are now triggered when the purchase and sale is delivered, not signed. So day one, for example, day one of the inspection contingency is the first business day after the PNS was delivered. Um, Question on deposits. Is it a good idea to check time is of the essence? How many hours or day are how many hours slash days are reasonable to give a buyer to pay the initial deposit? And does it make sense to have the buyer pay one large deposit? So we'll break those down. I think it is going to be very deal specific. There's no rule or there's no rule coming out of this, but I think it's going to be very deal specific whether you want to check time of the essence. The issue was that, and I think it's good to know the background and why these changes were initiated and the complaints that were coming to the legal hotline, which initiated these. Problems were happening where the purchase and sale agreement was being shared digitally without the deposit showing up. And we had instances where the contract was fully enforceable with the promise of consideration, but without the consideration actually showing up to the listing broker, there was almost no. Sometimes the buyers disappeared, and they had no skin in the game, and to get a release out of them was nearly impossible. So if you have a feeling, I would say that if there's an instance where the property has multiple offers and you want to be able to get back on the market real quick, if somebody's not going to deliver their deposit, time of the essence may be a good idea. Or if you've had a case where there was a habitual offender where the deposit wasn't showing up on time, the next time around, you may want to check that time of the essence box. How many hours and days are reasonable to give buyers to pay the initial deposit? Again, I think this is all going to be very deal specific. If the deposit is coming from somebody local and in town, and the listing agency is in town, etc., and it's going to be hand delivered, I would say anywhere 48 hours or so would be reasonable. If it is coming from California, maybe a few more days it is more reasonable there. I think with the way the mail system has been working, it's a good idea to make suggestions that the deposit is sent by by FedEx, UPS, overnight delivery, etc. And then obviously it's going to also very much depend on if that time of the essence box was checked. Does it make sense to have the buyer pay one larger deposit? I think either way, I think with the changes in the purchase and sale agreement, my answer is going to be yes. I know that I've seen people do it where they use the purchase and sale agreement and they use the good faith deposit in the first line prior to the changes. And then they would promise the rest of the deposit upon signing of the purchase and sale agreement. I don't think that is necessary anymore, because I think that the controlling factor will be the actual timeline of the delivery of the deposit. And personally, no need to break it down anymore, but I think that how you want to run your business is going to control there. And can a listing broker refuse to release a purchase and sale agreement until he or she receives the buyer deposit? This is obviously more of a way we used to do business years ago, when we would deliver 4 copies all signed, and I'm sure a lot of us remember that. Of course, you can continue to refuse to release the purchase and sale until the deposit is received. That being said, the new changes to the purchase and sale agreement should control and you shouldn't have to do that, because the language regarding the time of the deposit delivery is the reason why that was added to the contract and to alleviate this. Mortgage contingency. How many days are reasonable to give a buyer to make formal application? We pulled this pretty much right out of the Massachusetts contract, the offered the MAR form. I would say anywhere, and this is just my suggestion, this is not a RIAR suggestion by any means. I would say anywhere from 5 to 7 days, depending on what day you're signing the purchase and sale agreement, is my personal opinion. The contract is going to, um, unless otherwise specified, the contract is going to work off of calendar days, not business days. So I think that if the purchase and sale agreement is, being signed late on a Friday night, you may want to add an extra day or two in, depending on how that loan officer works on the weekends, etc. But I think anywhere from 5 to 7 days is reasonable for the buyer to make that formal application to stay on track with the amount of days that you're closing, for your typical closing. Other hot issues is, how is the seller protected if the buyer is not required to provide a commitment letter, denial letter, or written notice that one has been issued by the lender? To break that down between commitment letter and denial letter, yes, the previous purchase and sale agreement did say that the buyer was supposed to deliver the commitment letter to either seller or listing licensee. But there are also no ramifications in that contract if they did not do that. The contract was quite clear that if there was not an extension requested by the commitment deadline, that the deal would move on. So in my opinion, there's really, other than the language being removed that it should be delivered, there's really no difference there. With the new contract, it just does not mandate that that commitment letter is delivered upon that time. The denial letter or written notice that once was issued by the lender. I can understand. I think we're going to have to see, quite honestly, how this plays out and if we're going to need to make changes in the future. But it is possible that you can get, if you are representing the seller and the buyer then says, the buyer or the buyer's agent does say that the deal before the commitment deadline, that the deal is going to die because the buyer was denied, there's no reason you can't reach out to the lender, and there's no reason why the lender can't provide something on their letterhead saying that this deal can no longer move forward. It doesn't need to say why or give personal information away. I understand it's not 100% required, and there's probably no teeth to it to make the person do that. But hopefully it's not going to come out of the blue and there's going to be issues arising beforehand, that you're prepared for this and it's not just a shock. And is the listing broker required to contact the buyer's letter to confirm that the commitment letter or denial was issued? Let's break that down again between commitment letter and denial. There is no duty for the buyer, for the listing agent to confirm that the commitment letter was issued. That should rest solely on the buyer and their agent, and it's their duty to either request the extension or not if the commitment letter is not delivered to the buyer before the commitment deadline. Otherwise, the deposit could become non-refundable after that, based on a denial letter or other issues that could arise in the lending process. And I think the same thing from the denial standpoint. It is the buyer's agent's responsibility to deliver that denial. I'm sorry, there is no delivery of the denial. It is the buyer's agent's responsibility to give the notice that the buyer was denied. I don't believe that is the listing agent's requirement whatsoever to check up on that, and that falls in the buyer's side. Just to keep a lookout for, there are going to be changes to the escalation addendum. That they're not procedural changes on how the escalator works. We're just trying to clarify the directions on it and make it much easier to follow for all agents to be able to read and understand. So again, no procedural changes to the escalation addendum, but you will see shortly an updated escalation addendum that is much more to the point and much clearer to understand.
Great, thank you. It looks like Chris might have a question. Chris?
Yeah, great job, Ryan. I love all the updates. Just one quick comment really is that you alluded to it, Ryan, where we're having issues with the checks getting mailed, that sort of thing. There are very, very, very reputable companies out there right now doing the direct, doing the Venmo of real estate, I call it, for your clients to be able to send the deposits directly to either the attorney or the listing agent's escrow account. I would just please suggest to spread the word, have people look out for it. I've signed up for it, and every time I go to use it, the other side is not comfortable with it because they're not informed on it. So this is 10, if you take where we're at now with this, 10 years ago, that's where we were with electronic signatures. We weren't people comfortable with it. 5 years from now, we're going to look back and say, why didn't we do this sooner? So I just suggest, please, to everybody, and spread the word. Look into some of these companies. They're great. They're trusted. They're backed by the same security companies that back Venmo and PayPal. Like they're secure. And I know it will make everybody's life a lot easier. So thank
you, Chris. And Monica, correct me if I'm wrong. I know you definitely want to look into that before using it. I think the hot issue on that is, and the reason why we're not there yet is because there is an issue with the deposit sitting with somebody other than the escrow holder for a period of time, and the fact that the money needs to be in an escrow account. So please, if you're going to use something like that, thank you, Chris. I appreciate all that. But please, if you're going to use something like that, make sure you understand where the money's going to be 100% of the time. So it's always with the escrow person.
I think Monica has something she'd like to comment on that.
Yes. Hi, everybody. Good job, Ryan, and everybody else. Yeah, we'd actually, at Chris's suggestion, we'd actually reached out to the Department of Business Regulation last fall just to see where they were with this. I think this is a really good reminder. Chris, I see in the chat that someone had asked what you're using to do the transfers. I think the main thing is if it transfers immediately into your account, that's one thing. DVR was just concerned about, is there going to be a lag time about, someone transfers money, then it kind of sits with a third party unless you pay extra. So depending on what you're using, but I think this would be a good time for us to revisit that with DVR, because they already made some changes with streamlining or actually offering live streamed classes for pre-licensing. So as soon as that becomes final, then this would be a good thing for us to work on in the new year. So thanks for the reminder, Ryan and Chris.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sandy in the chat says, so an ACH will work? Would that work? I know what it is. I don't know what the acronym stands for.
I would say any way that the money is transferred directly from the buyer directly to the escrow account with no hold period or intermediary is your safest today.
Great. Thank you.